Yo, what's good, Marvel Garden enthusiasts? Today we have the worst takes by the one and only Mel Kiper. So if y'all don't know who Mel Kiper is, he's basically like a draft analyst. He analyzes all the scouts and how they're gonna do in the NFL. Or not scouts, I said scouts. Fucking recruits, and basically analyzes how they're gonna do in the NFL. And according to Flight Mike, he's made some bad takes. So let's go ahead and check it out. I'm pretty sure I heard something where he said Johnny Manziel is gonna be good or something. I don't even know. Or yeah, I don't know. But let's check it out.
Has been covering the NFL draft for far longer
he's been doing
than
it.
I have been alive.
He's been
Since
doing it forever.
1984, he has shared news and stated his opinion on the top NFL prospects. And
bro, when I'm older, I want to be like Mel Kiper in a way, like an NFL, MLB, NBA analyst. You know what I'm saying? NFL, MLB, NBA, college football, college basketball expert, and all that. Yeah, that's something that I want to do when I'm older.
NFL team. You see his face on draft night and in the days, weeks, and months leading up to the NFL draft. His big board spells out who will go where in the first round. Typically, someone who has done something for so long would be very good at their craft and have earned the term expert. However, it has been proven again and again that Mel Kiper is far from an NFL draft expert. Not only has Kiper been widely criticized by NFL fans, but also NFL front office representatives due to his mistakes, and also because of something you would think would have been a prerequisite to his job: his lack of and substantial experience of any level in football, professional or even amateur. So what's going on, guys? Your boy Mike here, and today we are going to be looking at some of Mel Kiper's worst calls during the NFL draft and focus only on his worst analysis, especially when it comes to quarterbacks. Before we get to the content, just do me a favor. The NFL doesn't really like the fact that I make you guys content. They've been hitting me with limited demonetization claims and copyright claims. And in order to fight back the evil NFL and continue this push where I make you guys content, do me one favor and sack the like button for the YouTube algorithm. It takes a second and it keeps our channel afloat in the YouTube algorithm. Otherwise, there might be a chance that you might not see my next video on your home screen. Now that we got all that out of the way, break! Been losing account than 35 years, but recently, well, even longer than recently, it has been losing accountability. The order is incorrect far more than it is correct, and in the last NFL
the draft is
Mel
tomorrow,
Kiper,
bro.
the so-called
I'm gonna be
expert
watching that for sure.
of the NFL draft, had 20 consecutive incorrect picks in his list. Most people think if they make a few mistakes over and over, they lose their job, but not Mel. He keeps on showing up in articles, on ESPN, and of course, right there in the limelight on draft night. First, let's take a look at who Kiper is behind those glasses and under that helmet head of hair that, like his disposition, hasn't changed in, well, almost 40 years. Mel Kiper in the 1970s was a teenager fresh off of never touching a football, but was very interested in America's game and specifically college prospects in the NFL draft. Kiper immersed himself in the information of the NFL, specifically his hometown Baltimore Colts, and started developing his own draft cards, trying to hawk them to whoever would read them. Growing up in Baltimore, he never lacked an ounce of confidence and immediately aimed high by approaching Baltimore Colts executive Ernie Accorsi with his suggestions. You might be wondering who Ernie Accorsi is. Well, Ernie Accorsi was the general manager behind two quarterbacks that were presumptive. Ernie Accorsi was the general
My bad. Elmarvin.
And hasn't is behind those glasses and under that helmet head of hair.
His
disposition hasn't changed in, well, almost 40 years. Mel Kiper in the 1970s was a teenager fresh off of never touching a football, but was very interested in America's game and specifically college prospects in the NFL draft.
That's kind of how I am. I didn't really play football. I played like 2 practices, bro, and then I ended up quitting the team. I know y'all might call me a pussy for not staying, but the coaches really sucked, dude. I ain't even gonna lie, the coaches sucked. I didn't even know what I was doing half the time, so I ended up just leaving the team.
Immersed himself in the information of the NFL, specifically his hometown Baltimore Colts, and started developing his own draft cards, trying to hawk them to whoever would read them. Growing up in Baltimore, he never lacked an ounce of confidence and immediately aimed high by approaching Baltimore Colts executive Ernie Accorsi with his suggestions. You might be wondering who Ernie Accorsi is. Well, Ernie Accorsi was the general manager behind two quarterbacks that were presumptive #1 overall picks and transcendent talents refusing to play for him. First being John Elway refusing to play for the Baltimore Colts, and almost more than 20 years later, Eli Manning refusing to play for the San Diego Chargers. Now, Accorsi, instead of looking at Mel Kiper's cards, would just straight up take them and throw them in the trash.
Damn.
This gave Mel Kiper a business idea: try to sell your draft reports to fans. Kiper took that idea and began his own NFL talent
smart.
evaluating business in 1981.
Should I start doing that,
he
Chad?
named Kiper Enterprises. And in his own home, he started as a young entrepreneur, all while he took classes at Essex Community College in Baltimore. Although we don't know for sure, let's just assume that he played some intramural flag football just to give the guy some kind of football experience, but he probably did more studying, business planning, and watching ESPN, which was at the time a 2-year-old sports station back then. Most of the time was spent in his business producing a draft preview in October, newsletters in November, December, and January, a free agency data sheet in February, and his annual draft book with scouting reports in March, a draft update in early April, and a draft review after the event. Since this was way before the time of the internet, Kiper obtained his information by calling long distance to sports writers, college football coaches, and whoever would talk to him. Still living at home, Kiper amassed long-distance phone bills, as back then you were charged for every minute on a call.
Yeah.
Thus, his dad installed a huge satellite dish at their home so he could gather all of his information in a more economically friendly way. After the 1982 season, Kiper heard from Accorsi again, and probably because Kiper wouldn't leave him alone. He offered Mel a front office position with the Colts, which was a lowly job but still a job in the NFL. We all would know that the Colts would eventually move to Indianapolis shortly following Kiper joining their staff, and either they didn't take Kiper with them, or Kiper didn't want to leave his sweet digs of home sweet home. The stars finally aligned for Kiper in 1984, and he joined the ESPN coverage of the NFL draft and was officially coined an analyst. Although his first paycheck from ESPN for the coverage of the NFL draft was only $400, he has been with ESPN ever since. Kiper joined the draft crew right before the NFL draft became the giant broadcasted event that it is today. In the early 80s, it was covered by the media more like the owners' meetings are covered today. Within 5 years, Kiper married his wife Kim, who started running the day-to-day operations of Kiper Enterprises, and Kim has been running the subscription service of Kiper's draft analysis and other operations out of their home since Kiper started his gig on ESPN. 7 TVs in their modest home in the 1980s turned into a 6,500 square foot home with dozens of televisions and a personal radio and a TV studio. Mel started off strong in determining quarterbacks that might be misses in the NFL and should be drafted towards the bottom of the order. Famously, in the 1990 NFL draft, Mel Kiper would rate Jeff George, a quarterback out of Illinois, as the 84th best player in the NFL draft. However, George was still selected #1 overall by Indianapolis, but it turned out Mel was correct on not placing him anywhere near the top quarterbacks available, as Jeff George didn't become anything other than a trivia question answer. Of course, we haven't ever heard of Jeff George's name in NFL record books, or have even seen any old highlight reels, as he went 46-78 as a starter in 12 seasons in the league with 5 different teams. Only a 1-2 playoff record, proving that this time Kiper was right about a quarterback. And if my editor happens to have found any footage of Jeff George, show him some love in the comment section down below. But also in 1990, although he was correct on what quarterbacks would be misses, Kiper had one big slip up.
Yeah, you can find old 90s highlights, like you can find old NFL primetime highlights on YouTube.
Houston quarterback Andre Ware as the next.
Bro, I ain't gonna lie, I be binge watching old NFL primetime highlights like every day.
Quarterback,
like ones from 2008, 2004, you know, just like some a bunch of them from the 2000s, 90s.
where a Heisman Trophy winner was chosen number 7 overall by the Detroit Lions, but retired after only 6 career NFL starts and within 3 years was in the Canadian Football League. Looking back at the 1991 draft, Kiper had Dan McGuire and Brett Favre rated at the same level heading into that draft where prospects were still called on their home landlines. Favre was taken in the second round, thus had to hang out in the bedroom waiting around all while Dan McGuire was taken number 16 overall. Dan McGuire is now more famously known as Mark McGuire of Major League Baseball's brother rather than as a NFL quarterback.
That's
we
tough.
all know who Brett Favre is. Dan only made 5 NFL starts. As for Favre, he has a Super Bowl ring, numerous NFL records, and a sharp-looking gold jacket. In the 1993 NFL Draft, Rick Mirer, the Notre Dame quarterback, was rated by Kiper as the 30th best available player. He was picked by Seattle number 2 overall and put up despicable numbers, going 24-44 as a starter and had 76 interceptions,
24-44
with 5 different teams over 8
76
NFL
interceptions,
seasons. Looks
50
like that is the time
touchdowns,
a
man.
team
Fuck.
should have listened to Mel. However, it didn't take long before Kiper's ratings were surrounded by controversy and his legitimacy came into question by NFL front office types. In the 1994 NFL Draft, Kiper harshly criticized the Indianapolis Colts for passing on quarterback Trent Dilfer and not choosing him with their first-round pick. The vice president of the Colts, Bill Tobin, said out loud that Kiper had
Trent
no more
Dilfer was
credibility
like,
than his next-door neighbor and gave a quote that
he
still
has
used
a Super Bowl ring, but that was because of the
today,
defense.
saying, who the hell is Mel Kiper? In 1998, Mel Kiper, looking more like Dracula than a draft expert, called the Packers drafting Matt Hasselbeck in the 6th round a waste of the pick. Turns out Hasselbeck's career wasn't a waste by any means. Also in 1998, that was the fateful draft in which there were many arguments between analysts on whether Peyton Manning or Ryan Leaf should be drafted number 1 overall. Mel Kiper did say that.
Bro, I can't believe that was even a fucking debate, man. Like, Ryan Leaf was just so immature. I would have took Manning any day of the week over Ryan Leaf.
Manning was a better choice for number 1, but Kiper also stuck his foot in his mouth when he was quoted
Ryan Leaf wasn't hungry enough, bro. But Manning was.
Talking about Leaf's character. Kiper said that his
Ryan
attitude
Leaf was a prick. He was.
Be an asset in the NFL and gave him a mental advantage.
What? An
over
asset
other
in the
players
NFL?
the draft class. Kiper added, I think Ryan Leaf is more mature
Guys,
than
go watch old Ryan Leaf highlights. This dude was trash. And what's even worse is my Cowboys got him like shortly after he left the Chargers. Oh my God.
Drew Bledsoe when he was drafted. He's very much a grown-up 21-year-old. Leaf is known now as the biggest draft bust ever. He had numerous behavioral issues, including yelling at a reporter in the locker room after a horrific game. He compiled a 4-17 starting record and was out of the league after 4 abysmal seasons and even spent time in prison. Kiper should really add Drew Bledsoe to his list of people to apologize to. Skipping to more present-day NFL draft times, many have questioned Mel Kiper's credibility, not only to the fact that he spent very little time in the actual operations of a professional football team and no time on the field, but also due to his close relationship with a plethora of NFL agents. Some have pegged that Mel Kiper overhypes the clients of his friends. Perhaps maybe he is conducting a side hustle by getting a handout for promoting certain individuals. I know there's been many NFL drafts where I haven't heard of a specific prospect until 2 months before the NFL draft, and they turn out to be absolute duds. I'm looking at you, Mitchell Trubisky. In 2002, Kiper missed on 2 quarterbacks. David Carr, who was drafted as the number 1 overall pick by the Houston Texans, and Joey Harrington, who was selected number 3 overall by the Detroit Lions. Kiper was high on both. Both of those quarterbacks did not fare well once joining NFL teams and spent most of their time on the sidelines with their helmet off, but Kiper was in love with them both, saying, I think when you look at Carr and Harrington, 3 or 4 years down the road, you're not going to call any one of these players a bust or a disappointment. In 2007, Kiper made a bold prediction that LSU quarterback Jamarcus Russell could be the next John Elway.
Mel, bro.
Saying that 3 years from now, you could certainly be looking at one of the elite top 5 NFL quarterbacks. Look out, because the skill level he has is certainly John Elway.
Marcus Russell wouldn't even want to look over film. That's why I don't know about Kyler Murray, because all bro wants to do is play Call of Duty and shit. Like, bro, if you want to be in the NFL, you have to look over film, dude. That should be, like, bro, I don't know.
The Raiders must have been listening to Mel as Oakland selected Jamarcus Russell with the first overall pick that year.
Not hungry enough. Jamarcus Russell was not hungry enough.
pan out at all, as he went
He
on
was
to
lazy.
a 7-18 record and
Didn't he join the team like overweight and shit? Like just not hungry enough, man.
only 3 seasons and had 38 turnovers versus 18 touchdowns while completing only 52% of his passes. Also
7
in
and
that
18.
2007 NFL draft, Mel Kiper was very
Brady
high
Quinn.
on Brady Quinn. Quinn is a remarkably nice guy and was
Jeez, Mel, you missed on a lot of players. Ryan Leaf and Jamarcus Russell are two of the biggest busts of all time.
great quarterback
Damn.
at Notre Dame, but he does a better job in his current career of television sports analyst and radio host than he did as an effective NFL quarterback. However, Mel Kiper in 2007 was all in that Quinn should have been the Detroit Lions' number 2 overall pick. Thankfully, the Lions had muted the TV when Kiper was blabbering as they went with selecting Calvin Johnson, Megatron,
That
who
was a great
definitely was a
pick.
much better decision for Detroit than Brady Quinn. Quinn was drafted number 22 overall to Cleveland, adding to the Browns' woes of another failed signal caller in Cleveland. Quinn bounced around the NFL, was even named a starter for an awful Kansas City Chiefs team midway through the 2012 season, and perhaps he could have been better if injuries didn't get the best of him throughout his 7-year journeyman career. The overhyping of certain players' theory
That must
came
be
to
tough to be a
substance when
journeyman,
Kiper
man.
over and over again pegged Jimmy Clausen of Notre Dame as a top 5 talent
Oh
prior
my
to
god, Jimmy Clausen. Bro, he was so
2000.
bad the Panthers had to draft Cam Newton. I don't know what they took him as, but bro, they had to redraft a quarterback the next year. That's how bad Jimmy Clausen was, man. And he was like mediocre at Notre Dame. He wasn't like great. You know what I'm saying?
2010 NFL draft. Kiper was so confident about Clausen going high and succeeding that he made a retirement promise on air during a NFL Live segment, stating that if Jimmy Clausen is not a successful quarterback in the NFL, I'm done. That's it. I'm out. Todd McShay would respond, "What is your time frame, Mel? When do we make up that assessment?" Kiper says, "I want 8 years." And McShay said, "It will only take 3 years, Mel. We can tell inside 3 years." Kiper said he wanted 8. At that point, and with Kiper botching
Was Jimmy Clausen even in the league like 8 years later? That's bad, Mel. You should have retired.
draft predictions for 10 years already, by 2010, most NFL scouting staffs had let what Kiper says go in one ear and out the other. Clausen dropped to the Carolina Panthers, who had the 48th overall pick. He was so terrible that the Carolina Panthers found themselves picking number 1 overall the year after.
Yeah, that's what I just
Clausen
said.
would do absolutely nothing in the NFL, start only 14 games for 3 different teams, and would
14
retire by
games.
2015. Mel Kiper had Jimmy Clausen as his 4th best player in the 2010 NFL
Hell no.
draft. Due to that bet, remember that he made on live TV.
That was a bad
Kiper
class. The
should have
2010
announced his
class.
retirement in
No
2018,
notable
but
players
as
came
we
out of
know-
that. I don't think. I might be wrong. But let me look it up real quick.
Oh, he is still on air and is probably getting a nice salary from ESPN and who knows what other flows of income. Ricky Stanzi is another great guy, and the quarterback out of Iowa was even compared to Tom Brady prior to the 2011 draft. After the draft, while recapping the picks and asking who would have the best career out of all the quarterbacks taken in that class, Kiper said it would be Ricky Stanzi. Cam Newton and Andy Dalton were also in that
Yeah,
draft.
bro. I was right. Sam Bradford, who is just awful. Marquise Pouncey, Russell Okung, Ndamukong Suh was good. Gerald McCoy, he's okay. Eric Berry was good. Tim Tebow was one of the biggest busts in NFL history. Des Bryant was great. Earl Thomas was amazing. Joe Hayden, he was all right. Demaryius Thomas was good. Okay, so I might have been wrong. But with quarterbacks, I was not wrong. Quarterbacks, that draft class was so garbage. Like, bro, Sam Bradford, Jimmy Clausen, Tim Tebow. Like, damn. Awful.
Draft class. Kiper said that Stanzi would become a backup in Kansas City for a couple of years, and then just like Aaron Rodgers, become a starter and thrive. Stanzi never saw action in a game that mattered, and as
Mel,
of 2015,
you gotta do better,
he wasn't
man.
in the league anymore. Cam Newton and Andy Dalton, although now at the end of their road, had a lot more longer and more meaningful careers than
Yep.
Ricky. Russell Wilson was an undersized quarterback out of Wisconsin in 2012, and Mel Kiper had strong doubts about his ability to succeed as a starter. He didn't have any faith in his longevity and didn't have him projected anywhere near the top of the draft order. In that 2012 draft, analysts, including Kiper, were drooling over Andrew Luck and Robert Griffin III, naming them as—
I mean, they were good prospects coming out. They certainly seemed to have better futures than Russell Wilson at the time, but obviously now that's not the case. But I think RG3, his career was ruined due to injuries. Just he couldn't stop getting injured, and same thing with Andrew Luck, just injuries. But Russell Wilson is clearly the best out of those three.
As the next legendary quarterbacks in the NFL, and no one was saying anything about Russell Wilson. Granted, Russell Wilson wasn't drafted in a top position, and he lasted until midway through the third round, selected by the team that he has been legendary with for the past 8 seasons, the Seattle Seahawks. Mel Kiper basically—
I can't lie, Russell Wilson gets on my nerves, but he's a good quarterback, man. Just that interception in the Super Bowl, like, that shit pissed me off. Like, do better.
Said that Russell Wilson would be a good pick to serve as a backup coming off of the bench. He said regarding Wilson, he's a Seneca Wallace type. I think he goes in that 4th round area and has a serviceable NFL career. Seneca Wallace was a fill-in for Matt Hasselbeck when he injured his knee in 2006, went 2-2, reached 1,000 yards, and in 2008 was a fill-in for a few games, and then like a ton of others began the cycle of signed, released, while not quite reaching 5,000 passing yards on an 80 quarterback rating. Mel Kiper's Russell Wilson comparison to Seneca Wallace would be the only time Russell Wilson would be compared to a backup, as Wilson is on the yellow brick road, paid for Canton, with not only a Super Bowl ring and 8 Pro Bowl appearances, but many career highlights, including a season as the NFL passing rating leader, passing touchdown leader, crushing all the Seahawks quarterback records, has well over 30,000 career passing yards already, and over 4,000 yards tallied up just this season alone. In 2014, Kiper again said that the #1 overall pick of the NFL draft should be Johnny Manziel, who turned out to be a bust.
Bro, it was so weird because he was so good at Texas A&M. I remember watching him back at Texas A&M, and I'm pretty sure Texas A&M faced Alabama in the playoffs and they ended up losing, but bro was just amazing then.
Quarterback, and suggested that the Houston Texans should take him #1 overall. Kiper also compared Johnny Manziel to Frank Tarkenton. Thankfully for the Texans, they didn't choose Manziel. He went in the 22nd spot overall, and
bro like partying and being retarded most of the time, so fuck him. He wasn't hungry enough. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you want to be in the NFL, bro, you can't consistently fucking party and shit and act like you're invincible, because it's going to come back to bite you in the ass. And that's exactly what happened to Johnny Manziel.
2 seasons in Cleveland, when his off-the-field hobbies caused him to be out of the NFL completely.
Man, look at this.
Tarkenton was probably offended of the comparison to young Manziel,
as
Tarkenton was a 9-time Pro Bowler and won the NFL MVP award in 1975 while playing in the league for 18 seasons.
Yeah, bro, I ain't gonna lie. Like, I hate when young, Gen Zers say that, don't know about older players because they weren't born then. Like, bro, you have YouTube. Go look that shit up, bro. You can watch a full 1970s game on YouTube right now. Bro, go back and watch Fran Tarkenton. He was an amazing dual threat quarterback. Like, he was one of the first dual threats I've seen. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't born back then, but I go back and watch full games. Y'all should do that more, man. Like, I hate when people say, like, oh, I wasn't born back then, so I don't know. Like, bro, go watch it, dumbass. Stupid.
Mel Kiper should have probably retired in 2018, as in the 2020 draft, as it has been one of his worst so far. He started off hot, going 2-2, calling the Bengals drafting Joe Burrow #1, and my grandma could have called that one. Then he was correct in Washington selecting Ohio State defensive end Chase Young, and then Kiper correctly predicted 4 out of the first 6 picks, then struck out terribly, with only 1 additional correct first-round selection. Going over 21 at one point in the first round was far worse than the 16 incorrect picks in a row that he had in 2009. His 21 incorrect picks in a row in the odd 2020 draft made him look foolish, especially when there were dozens of other closer projections from those not getting paid 6-figure salaries. However, 2020 for Mel was still better than 2017 when he went 2 of 13 in picks and was incorrect on the final 25 picks. See, I told you he really should have retired in 2018. Maybe this year will be different for Mel Kiper in the NFL draft. I don't know. What do you think about Mel Kiper? Do you take his takes seriously, or do you listen to someone else? And if you do listen to someone else, do you subscribe to him and turn on their notifications? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic.
Yeah, bro, what do y'all think about Mel Kiper? Like, honestly, saying Jamarcus Russell and Ryan Leaf are, like, top 3 players, like, you know what I'm saying? Just, they didn't have the hunger. They didn't. Like, Manning had just more fight than Ryan Leaf did. Like, all Ryan Leaf cared about was his fucking ego and partying and shit. Like, bro, you cannot trust quarterbacks, or any players for that matter, that are just ego-driven and fucking selfish, because it will never work. It will never work. I mean, there's probably some cases where it has worked, but it usually never works. You know what I'm saying? But, hey, what do y'all think about this? Let me know in the comments what y'all think about Mel Kiper, and I'm out.